So welcome everybody to what is our final speaker series for this year. Hard to believe, but we're in for quite a treat. So for those of you who I don't know, my name is Ray Comiskey. I'm president here at Jefferson College, and it's absolutely my privilege to welcome you today to this program. We think it's going to be a great show, and our show today is entitled "You Had It Coming," and is being presented by Dr. Rebecca Ellison and some of the cast of Jefferson College's summer musical, Chicago. Dr. Ellison is a professor of communication and theater and is directing her 53rd production at Jefferson College and 58th overall. She started when she was 10. Right? Rebecca started as an actress in the production of Peter Pan many years ago, playing a lost boy, and progressed to directing in the 1990s at Marion High School in Marion, Illinois. She came to Jefferson College in 2000 and is celebrating 19 years at the college and 25 years as a teacher this month. Yeah. Now, Chicago is Dr. Ellison's white whale. She has attempted to secure the rights 5 times over the last decade, only to be denied. Very few theaters are granted the rights to this musical each year, and Rebecca applied for the 6th time in December of 2017, 18 months in advance, and was finally awarded permission to perform. Perseverance pays off. Joining her today is Mark Troutline, rehearsal accompanist and orchestra conductor. Amanda Boyer, choreographer for Chicago. She's also joined by cast members Whitney Dodson, Jamie McCarthy, Brandon Menke, Jade Knoll, Sabrina Ortiz, Chris Owens, Desiree Terry, and Tiffany Vonderay. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rebecca Ellison and the cast of Chicago.
Thank you very much. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You are about to see a story of murder, greed, corruption, violence, exploitation, adultery, and treachery. All those things we hold near and dear to our hearts. Thank you.
Find a flask, we're playing fast and loose. And all that jazz. Right up here is where I store the juice. And all that jazz. Come on, babe, we're gonna rush the sky. I bet you're lucky, Lynn, you never flew so high. 'Cause in the stratosphere, would you lend an ear to all that jazz?
So we hope that you will join
The Jefferson College Theatre Department on June 14th, 15th, 16th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd for our production of Chicago by Bob Fosse, John Kander, and Fred Ebb. It is based on the play by Maureen Dallas Watkins. The cast includes a total of 29 members, just a few of which are with me today, and they include Jefferson College students, area high school students, and community members. We also have an orchestra led by Mark Troutline with 13 different pieces. So we're very excited about all the people who are joining together to bring you Chicago. As Dr. Comiskey said, it's my white whale. If you're unfamiliar with how plays, musicals work, you can't just do whatever you want. You have to actually apply to get permission from the publishing company to do a performance, and also pay them a lot of money. So I decided long ago that Chicago was a show I really wanted to do. It speaks volumes to, I think, every day and age. And so I didn't want to do it when I taught high school. Probably wasn't the appropriate material. Yeah, I think things through first. And so once I started teaching at Jefferson, I had a particular group that came together to produce West Side Story. And these students and community members were phenomenal. And I thought, they're the ones to do Chicago. So I applied for the rights. The next day, denied. Made me very sad. And so I thought, okay, I'll wait and see what happens. Years pass. I have another group that comes along. Try, deny. Another group, and always deny. So finally, I gave a call to a woman by the name of Rebecca Schlossberg, who is my representative with Samuel French. And I said, what can I do? Why do you hate me? And she very calmly said, we don't hate you. And I said, yes, you do. You keep denying me. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. It feels like we're dating. She's like, okay, well, we don't want that. I said, I have no idea what to do to get these rights. She goes, look, Candor and Ed, they do not allow very many people to do this show during the year. Very limited. So she said, you need to apply as early as you can. I said, well, how early? She goes, 18 months. I'm like, I'm on it. So December 14th, 2017, I got up first thing that morning and I sat at my computer. Yeah, sad, isn't it? Yes. And I filled out my little form and I hit send and I waited. And nothing happened. And it was not until January that somebody finally responded to me, and it was Rebecca herself. She gave me a call. And she said, you got it. And I ran to the green room where my kids hang out. I'm like, big secret, we got Chicago. Because they granted it, but also they said, you can't tell anybody until, yeah, I know. They said, you can't tell anybody till March. March, that's a long time. But I'll do it. So we kept the secret, and then we finally were able to release that we got Chicago. So my white whale is defeated, and we hope you'll come out and see our wonderful musical. So I'd like to give you just a little bit of backstory on this musical, because as I said, you had it coming. The year is 1924, the Jazz Age. Maureen Dallas Watkins is a reporter for the Chicago Tribune. She is covering 2 trials for the newspaper. Now, who knew from these trials there would come the musical we know as Chicago? Chicago presents the audience with a scathing satire of how show business and the media make celebrities out of criminals, and thereby make crime very attractive. A story that still resonates today as we are inundated with more and more reality television and stars being made out of the unthinkable. The primary premise of Chicago is that the world of crooked lawyers and a public who craves violence is as frightening in its own way as the crimes themselves. Written and directed by Bob Fosse, composer John Kander, and lyricist Fred Ebb, they created a show with an attitude that never softened. Unlike other musicals about show business, this one never tempers its cynicism with compassion. As I said, Chicago is based on 2 trials. One trial is that of Beulah Anand, and she is the inspiration for Roxie Hart. The second trial is of Belva Gartner, and she's the inspiration for Velma Kelly. Again, let's set the scene. 1924. No drinking, unless in secret. Beulah Anand is just 23 years old, but she's married to her second husband, Albert Anand, and they've been married for 4 years. So she had a bit of an early start. On April 3rd, 1924, Beulah was arrested for the murder of Harry Kalstedt. Now, she and Harry were having an affair at the time of the crime. Here is what happened. Story number 1. Beulah tells the police that Kalstedt made advances. I know. Thank you, you're with me, I know. Advances, they're the worst. And those advances caused her to shoot him in defense of her honor. Honor, very important.
Okay?
Now, at the time of that first statement, Beulah may have been a little intoxicated. And once she sobered up, she decided to actually tell the truth. So she confessed to the police that she had lied and that Kalstead had threatened to leave her, and she killed him rather than lose him. He must have been quite a catch. So then she is arrested for murder, and she's put on trial. The main testimony in her trial comes from a man by the name of William Wilcox, who happens to be Kalstead's brother-in-law. And he recalled something that Beulah had told him. He stated that Kalstead had gone over to Beulah's apartment in the afternoon with 2 quarts of wine. Yeah, we see where this is going, don't we? It was for the 2 of them to enjoy, a quart apiece. And after drinking for about an hour, the 2 started quarreling, which is likely to happen when you have that much wine. So she called him a 4-flusher. The nerve. I mean, does anybody even know what a 4-flusher is? I will readily admit, I had to look it up. I did not feel like that was insulting, but it is. It's with regard to a poker hand. Because if you have 4 of a kind, you're like, woo, but if somebody, it doesn't happen. So it actually means someone who seems promising, but isn't. Feel free to use that in your daily Call someone a 4-flusher. But she also called him jailbird because he had served some time. But he did not appreciate that. And he told her she was no good. Now, the plot thickens. There's a revolver on the bed between the 2 of them. At this very moment in the testimony, Mrs. Anand's lawyer jumps up and said,
1 and 2 and...
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both reached for the gun, the gun, the gun, the gun. Oh yes, they both reached for the gun, for the gun. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both reached for the gun, the gun, the gun, the gun. Oh yes, they both reached for the gun, for the gun. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both reached for the gun, the gun, the gun, the gun. Oh yes, they both reached for the gun, for the gun. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both, oh yes, they both reached for the gun, 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 the gun. Both reach for the
what Anand's lawyer said. Fewer the guns, the guns, the guns, the guns, the guns. But he said they both reached for that gun that was lying between them. Beulah reached it first. Now, as testimony unfolded, the plot thickens even more. I know, how's that possible? But it does. So we learn that the shooting occurred at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. For almost 4 hours, Beulah paced the floor and listened to hoolaloo on the phonograph. She finally, around 6, called her husband and said, "I've shot a man who attacked me, and he's dead." So her husband rushes home, finds him dead, calls the police. The police and the coroner arrive at 6:20. The coroner determined that Kalstead had died only 30 minutes before they arrived. I think hoolaloo was very distracting to Beulah. So according to the article written by Watkins in the Chicago Tribune, people reportedly said that Beulah Anand was the prettiest woman ever accused of murder in Chicago, and that she was an awfully nice girl. And so, on May 24th, 1924, the jury found her not guilty of murder. The next day, she left her husband, saying, "He's too slow." They would soon divorce, and Beulah would marry 2 more times before her death in 1928 from tuberculosis. It's a shock. Now, the second trial, which served as the inspiration for Velma Kelly, was that of Belva Gardner. Now, Belva was a cabaret singer and society divorcee. Her age was only estimated because she wouldn't reveal it. So she was estimated somewhere in her 30s. She was accused on June 5th, 1924, of the murder of Walter Law, an automobile salesman and married man with 1 child. The story is fairly short and simple. The two were having an affair. They had gone to the Gingham Cafe, which was a cabaret, and got drunk. Although, according to the testimony of the owner of the Gingham Cafe, there is no way they got drunk there. He did not serve alcohol in 1924, so they lied. At some point, they left the cafe and they drove to Belva's home. Now, she remembers nothing as she was too drunk. But the police found Walter slumped over the steering wheel of his car, dead from a gunshot wound, parked in front of Belva's home, and she was inside covered in blood. The prosecutor said that Belva had ensnared Mr. Law, and that he had tried to break away, to be faithful to his wife and child later. And she had killed him rather than lose him. Her only defense? She was too drunk and doesn't remember. He could have shot himself for all she knew. Her actual statement was, quote, "We got drunk and he got killed. I don't know how." The primary evidence came from the testimony of Pale E. Goodwin, who was a friend of Walter Law's. He said that Law feared Belva, that he had for some time, scared to death of that woman. 3 weeks before the murder, he testified, he told me she locked him in her apartment with her and threatened to stab him with a knife unless he stayed there. So he stayed there. And they had an affair because he was scared. The prosecution decided to create a story of a woman desperate to keep her man. But like Beulah, she was found not guilty. Apparently, the defense went to the judge and asked for a dismissal of the case. And the judge said, "I haven't the power to tell the state's attorney what to do, and therefore I deny the motion. But if the jury should bring in a verdict of guilty, I am confident the Supreme Court would reverse the decision, as the evidence is only circumstantial, string enough together to arouse suspicion of guilt, but not convict." So the judge might have been on a different side. So following her acquittal, she remarried her second husband. I know, he paid for her defense. So they would file for divorce, but not get divorced. And then she was arrested for DUI, and then they went off to Europe, and then he died in 1948. But Belva lived until 1965. So she was actually present for the plays, with the play and some of the film versions that came after her. Now, these stories are also important because at the time, there were quite a few women on what is called Murderous Row. And these acquittals of Beulah Anand and Belva Gardner actually gave hope to those women who were still on Murderous Row, like Sabella Nitti. Now, she was accused of killing her husband. She chopped him up. But she says, and I quote, "She have gun, she shoot, she go free. Me no gun, no shoot. Me here over a year.
He had it coming. He had it coming. He only had himself to blame. If you'd have been there, if you'd have seen it, I bet you would have done the same. The dirty bum 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 bum. The dirty bum 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 bum. They had it coming. They had it coming. They had it coming all along. 'Cause if they used us and they abused us, how could you tell us that we were wrong? He had it coming. He had it coming. He only had himself to blame. If you'd have been there, if you'd have seen it, I bet you would have done the same.
Unfortunately, most of those women would stay on Murderous Row and would meet their fate with the hangman. Because, as was stated, they killed their husbands. Beulah and Belva killed lovers. I wasn't alive, I don't know. So again, Chicago the Musical is based on the play by Maureen Dallas Watkins, which premiered in New York City in December of 1926. It would become one of the most adapted plays in history. There was a silent film by Cecil B. DeMille in 1927, and a Ginger Rogers comedy called Roxie Hart in 1942. But there was a lull in performances or adaptations. Watkins became a born-again Christian and didn't feel that the material in her play was very appropriate. So she would not release the rights for performance for many years. It wasn't until her death in 1969 that Bob Fosse came to her family and requested the rights to adapt the play into a musical, and they were granted. The musical opened in 1975. When it opened, there hadn't been a musical of such savage satire since Threepenny Opera. Bob Fosse made theater pieces about the decadence of our world, the lies and conceits and compromises, the deals with the devil we all make. He attacked hypocrisy wherever he saw it, even in his own work. He knew the world of Chicago in which killers are made into stars isn't far at all from the real world. Scott Miller from Inside Chicago stated, though Fosse always said Chicago was his reaction to Watergate, it is perhaps more relevant now than ever before.